Hello. We are so thrilled to be here today with Paul Mealor. He is one of the most performed and recorded and broadcast composers in the world, and he is a lovely guy, and we're really excited to chat with him today. Welcome, Paul.
Hello. Hi, it's great to be with you. Lovely to be here.
Hi. How are you doing, first of all?
Good, really good. I've been out in the sun, so I'm a bit sunburnt. We've got wonderful weather up here in Scotland, and so long walks along the river here in the north of Scotland, and yeah, really good. I mean, as a composer, I know lockdown has affected everybody in all sorts of ways, but as a composer, for me, it's just been I've just carried on really as much as I normally have. There hasn't been a huge impact because I live in the middle of nowhere, so I very rarely see people anyway. So for me, in terms of work, there hasn't been much of a
Right.
change.
There were some good jokes going around the internet, and had a picture of a composer at his computer, said composer before the pandemic, and then exactly the same picture of the composer at his computer and composer during quarantine. It's sort of true, isn't it? Uh,
Absolutely.
Good. Well, I'm glad you've been able to be productive. Like, tell us what you're working on now and what juices are flowing.
Yeah, no, it's been great. I mean, I've done a number of pieces for charity. A number of people contacted me, and there's a thing here in the UK called the Friends of Cathedral Music, which I don't know if
Hmm.
you've heard of them. They're a major organisation that raise millions of UK pounds for cathedral musicians. And the big issue in lockdown here in the UK is that all our fabulous choirs have been furloughed,
Mm.
and some of them may not come back. They've been trying to raise the Friends of Cathedral Music have been trying to raise £1 million to
Wow.
enable cathedrals to apply for this money to keep their choirs. So they asked me to write two pieces. So I've written an introit, a setting of Lead Me Lord, and I've written an anthem called Te Luces Ante Terminum, before the ending of the day. One is for a virtual evensong, which will be sponsored so people can put
Oh,
money in,
wow.
and one is for a compliment, a virtual compliment. So they've kept me busy, and I've written another. I write a number of pop songs, which I don't know if you know that, but I've done a lot of those over the years. Yeah,
And so you've been
and
working on some of those in these
yeah,
few months as well.
I have. Yes, I've just finished one. For good musicians that I know, friends of mine. And I started on a couple of film scores as well, which I've never done before, so that's fantastic. And a piano concerto.
Oh my goodness.
So, so there you go. Not been idle.
Oh my goodness, that's so exciting. And so how does this work? I mean, I know a lot of choirs are in North America as well, have been put on hold for the time being, and everyone is trying to think creatively about how we can make choral music when we can't actually come together for the moment. How does that work? A virtual Compline service with a virtual performance or premiere of your work? What does that look like?
Yeah, well, luckily I haven't had to deal with any of the technical side of things. I just wrote the music, but there's a whole gang of people, and I think what they do is each individual person sings their own part to there's a conductor conducting,
Uh-huh.
and they record it on such as this or Zoom or any of these things, and then they send that in, and then there's a team that then spend hours and hours and hours
Yes.
making sure that it all fits. So it's not ideal, but at least it's singers are doing something that because all of us are involved in singing in different shapes or forms, are just desperate to sing again together,
Yeah.
and this of course is the safest way, but it's not ideal, but that's how it works.
It's not ideal, but it gives the effect for the time being. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow. I know, hours and hours of production time. I think a lot of musicians are learning this more technological side of what we all do.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, before we go any further, I want to ask more about what you're working on in some particular pieces that we all know and love. But just tell us like your story. How did you grow up? You're from Wales, right?
Yes.
And tell us about your upbringing and how choral music was a part of that, and if this was always the plan, or if how this came to be your career as a composer and musician.
Yeah, okay. Well, I was born at an early age. So I was born in 1975. I was born the same day that Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen went into the charts number one.
Oh,
Same
that's
day as
awesome.
that. It's fantastic, isn't it? So I never forget that. And so I wasn't going to. Never had interest in doing anything musical when I was tiny. I mean, of course, as every kid creates and don't they? You
Hmm.
can't help but create stuff. But it wasn't, I wasn't particularly interested. And then I had a really odd experience when I was 9. And I couldn't swim at that point, and I was out with my brother playing, and I fell into a river. And he was way away, so he couldn't see me or anything, and I was drowning.
Oh my
And there was no way out. There was nobody about, and so I I decided, well, this is it. I'm going to die. And there's this thing that you hear people say they surrendered to death, and I did. And I thought, well, this is it. I'm going to stop fighting. And at that point, the most amazing warmth came over me, which I can't really. Warmth is not the right word. It's just amazing feeling, um, uh, which made me think that where I was about to go wasn't so bad.
God.
And I closed my. I was in the water, the next minute, I woke up, and a passerby had dragged me out
Oh
and
my goodness.
resuscitated me. Yeah, and saved my life. And yeah, so from that moment on, I said to my dad, who that I wanted to find out what this feeling was. Um, and he said, well, the only person I think is because we live quite close to the cathedral in St Asaph in North Wales. So we're going to talk to the dean. So we arranged a meeting with the dean. He was a lovely guy, and I was only 9. Remember this?
Mm.
So I went into the cathedral, and as I went in for this meeting in the cathedral, the choir was rehearsing,
Huh.
and I heard them, and I had never heard a live choir before. And of course, you know what it's like. I don't have to tell
Hmm.
you how amazing it is.
Hmm.
And they were singing "CC, the Word is Incarnate" by
Hmm.
Gibbons,
Hmm.
and "What Sweeter Music" by John Rutter. And I knew I want to be involved in this. So when the dean comes through, and we chatted, I initially thought that it was the church was calling me, but of course it was, but not to be a priest, but to be involved in music. And so I auditioned for the choir and got in.
Wow.
I don't know why, because I was terrible, but they obviously they took a chat. It was always terrible, to be honest. They took a punt on me, and so I was in the choir. And of course, the amazing thing about being a choir boy or girl is that you sing the repertoire, the
Mm.
daily offices of in the cathedrals, and it's amazing music. And so I fell in love with Tallis and Tompkins and Gibbons and Vaughan
Mm.
Williams, all of these unbelievably brilliant composers. And I thought, well, I can have a go at that,
Hmm.
being rather arrogant as one is when one's young. And so that's how it started. Yeah, and as I started to write stuff, and the choir gave me a go and sang it for me. And of course, as you know, people are very honest in choir, so they tell you what's bad and what isn't, which is useful because then you can.
That's the only
I
way to grow. Yeah.
Absolutely, I've learned more by my failures than ever from many successes. That's
Mm.
absolutely true. And so my grandmother at the time said, she's passed away since. She said, you need lessons. And so she talked to William Matthias, the great composer,
Mm.
who wrote the music to Prince Charles and Lady Diana's wedding in 1981.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's remarkable that. And so he took me on as a kid and gave me composition lessons each week or each fortnight, whenever he could manage. And my world was opened up. And he suggested brass instruments, so I learnt euphonium and trombone and tuba and played in bands and orchestras. The great thing about the reason why brass was suggested, partly because I warmed to it as an instrument, is that in the orchestra, if you're playing trombone or tuba, you don't play that much, so you get to listen to what's happening. So if you're a string player, you're at it all the time. But if you're in the
Mm.
brass, you get to hear the orchestra from inside. So
Mm.
it was
And just
really
hope to come
useful.
in when your rests are over.
Well, I missed a
Yeah.
few of them, but as a composer, you're in it, you see,
Yeah.
and it was fabulous. So that's how it all started. So it started as a spiritual experience, and
Wow.
I've tried in my music. And one of the things I love hearing when people do reviews, of course, I've had good and bad reviews, as every composer has. But when they say something nice and they say something like, "Oh, there's a warmth in this music," I think, because that's
Mm.
what I'm trying to get, that warmth that I felt years ago. Never
Wow.
since. Never since.
You think every piece that you've ever written ties somehow back
Hmm.
to that, trying to express that feeling?
I try to find a harmony. Every piece, you fail every time, of course, because how can you? as
Mm,
an artist come anywhere near what is the divine, whatever that is. You can't do that.
mm.
But I try in each piece to hone the text in the harmony and in the melody and the text and shape, to try and get a feelings that people get somewhere near what I'd experienced in the music. And
Wow.
sometimes it works, of course, and sometimes it doesn't.
Well, now that I've heard that story, I had never heard that story before, Paul. It's amazing. Now that you say that, I think it's so apparent in your music, and all of it
Oh, well,
has that ring and that openness and that warmth, that totally makes sense.
yeah.
Now that I know that story,
Thank you.
tell us
That's
about
lovely.
a thing. Well, you're very welcome. It's stunning music, and you clearly have a voice. And that I know some composers, including myself, struggle to kind of find like what is my sound. And people say, "What kind of music do you write?" And you have to try to describe it in words, and it's hard to string it together. But it sounds like you have this sort of core at the center of your composition, and I think that's really audible. It's very beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you very
Yeah.
much. Appreciate
Tell
that.
us about the Ubi Caritas and
Ah,
how that came about and that experience. This is for anyone watching who doesn't know the piece that was performed at the royal wedding of Prince William and Kate Middleton, and was an instant sensation. So just tell us like that process and what are the steps for all the young composers out there? How do you land that kind of commission?
yeah. I
I'm
mean,
joking, of course, but
no, no, you're right. I get asked that all the time. How do you? How
yeah.
we can maybe go on to that later. Composers often ask me how can they get their stuff out there, and I've got some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I would
But
definitely ask you for advice. Yeah.
because it's a really important thing. But this was all by accident. So I mean, this was nothing to do with any talent I had necessarily. Two ways. I knew very well the private secretary, who was a good fan of my music, to the Prince of Wales, and
Mm.
she was working with William and Kate on the music side of things and advising them and everything, and did a fantastic job, along with the Prince of Wales, who had a big input in that in the
Oh,
choice.
wow.
Yeah, big, very big impact. He
Choice
suggested
of
lots of good things.
text and that kind
Hmm?
of thing?
Well, no, I'll get on to that. Not in the
Okay.
commission. So the commission was different. So anyway, so I was suggested by the Prince of Wales to William and Kate, and actually the funniest thing is Kate had heard some of my stuff in St Andrews, so she
Oh,
knew
wow.
me. I didn't know that until afterwards. So I was. They were already thinking about me anyway before Prince of Wales
Oh,
suggested it.
that's lovely.
So and because I lived in Scotland where they were students, and I have a house on Anglesey Way. They have a house. So there were lots of things that made me the right choice in terms politically.
Yeah.
So anyway, Prince William phones me up and contacts me and asks me if I would write a piece, if they could use a piece of mine. It was "Now Sleeps the Crimson Petal," the piece that I wrote.
Yes. I was
Yeah,
listening to that this morning.
that
Very
was a
interesting.
piece that they
Yeah.
said could they use that in the nice. Well, of course, I didn't quite believe it was him, to be honest, and I couldn't quite believe the whole thing. I thought somebody was winding me up.
Right.
So because you would, wouldn't you? So anyway, I said yes, of course. Then, of course, a letter arrives, on Her Majesty's service,
Right.
and you're asked to sign this form to say that you won't talk about it until it's announced.
Yeah.
But the odd thing is you have to get it witnessed by somebody. And that witness is allowed to talk about whatever they want. They don't, they don't have to sign this thing. So it's just really odd. So anyway, I signed it, of course, and I didn't talk to anybody about it until it was officially announced. And but there was an issue. So there was a big meeting, and the dean and chapter at Westminster Abbey had some reservations about the text of "Now Sleeps the Crimson Petal," and I had a discussion with them. And it's a very sensual text. I don't know if you know the text, but it's Tennyson, and
Mm.
it's about two lovers lying naked in each other's arms under the moon. Well, you can imagine why clergy
Hmm.
might get a bit jumpy about that. And so all sorts of things were discussed, and in the end, I came up with a solution that why don't I just rewrite it, so with a
Oh.
different text, because they wanted that music, you see. So that's where Ubi Caritas was born. So Ubi Caritas is a rewriting of "Now Sleeps the Crimson Petal." And if you listen to them back by back, they're in different keys. They have different texts, of course, so the stresses are different, but
Hmm.
it's essentially the same piece. And quite often people perform them together either end of a concert now.
Oh, cool.
So anyway, so I rewrote that, and I had a day to do it because all this had gone on for some time, the discussions and things,
Right.
because people were very busy and with other things as well, not just the music.
Yeah.
And so James O'Donnell, fabulous conductor at Westminster Abbey, the director of music, said, "Look, if you get it to me by tonight," he said, "I can run through it with the choir. We can record it tonight and send it off to get the okay from the couple and from the Queen. Essentially, she had to sign everything off."
Yeah.
So this is a funny. So they did. And it was amazing. So I just rushed. I just cancelled all my classes. I postponed them. I just sat
Mm-hmm.
down and I did it all, sent it off. And he was good to his word. They recorded it in their rehearsal. They just like ran through it once and then recorded it, and it was brilliant. It really was. I've got it. I've got the recording. And
Wow.
then they put it on an iPod. And yeah, Her Majesty listened to it on an iPod, I was told. I don't know how true that is, but that was what I was told. And so then a note comes from the private secretary to say all been agreed, everyone loves it, and that's that. But it was a tense moment to rewrite it. I can tell you,
No
it was
kidding.
tough. So not many people know that story.
That's so high octane composition there. That's amazing and
It
so
is, but
exciting.
there's something magical that happens when you revisit a piece and try and find other modes. I don't know if you've ever done that yourself, but try and find other modes within it of expression, especially when you're resetting the harmonies to text. And the piece is actually quite different. There are new chords and stuff in it. I decided, because when I had my discussion with the Duchess of Cambridge, she said that she loved the sound of a single choir boy or choir girl singing.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the only thing that I was asked to do, to put in. The rest was completely free, whatever I wanted to do. And so I decided at the end I would have just one, in this case at Westminster Abbey, there were choir boys, that there would be one choir boy singing the original Latin plain chant, which of course we know from the Jerusalem setting as well,
Mm-hmm.
which is hundreds of years old. So at the very end, this little guy just sings just a snippet of that original plain chant. The guy that was chosen was a guy called Tom Featherstone, and he was tiny, of course, and he only found out, I think, the day before that he was going to be doing it. To sing to a third of the world,
Yeah.
and he oh well, why did he sing it? It was stunning.
Yeah.
And so when we were doing the proper CD recording of a whole load of my stuff with Tenebrae, one of the best choirs in the world, Nigel Short, the conductor, who's fabulous, said to me, "Who do you want to sing the solo?" I said, "We've got to bring the little guy back, Tom."
Yeah.
So he did. So he sings. He sings with Tenebrae in the recording that they did of that, and it's lovely. Yeah,
Oh, that's amazing. We'll try to post that on our page after today so everyone can
brilliant.
hear it. Yeah, what a sweet sound and so wise of the Duchess to ask for that. I think it's really
Well,
beautiful.
it's really funny. So I've made such good friends with a whole gang of people involved in that, all the people behind the scenes and everything. It's been lovely. And
Yeah.
the guy, Tom, the little choir boy who's now 21,
Right.
he's just graduated from Cambridge, So I've kept in contact with him on Facebook and stuff. And that's been really
Very
nice.
cool.
Yeah.
Oh, very cool. So tell us about other work. I know you were the composer in residence for Procoro, one of our
Yeah.
Canadian professional choirs that we're so proud of, and that's how we connected originally
Yep.
through work with that ensemble. What tell us about that experience of being composer in residence and what that means with Procoro or other groups that you've worked with in that capacity?
That's always a very special thing because I've done it with three other groups, so I'm kind of used to it now. But Procure was the first time that I'd done that,
Hmm.
and that came about because I knew Michael Zaug quite well. We worked together in New York on a number of things, and he said, "Look, why don't you come out and work with Procuro?" He's their musical director. For people who don't know, fabulous conductor, absolutely
Mm-hmm.
wonderful musician, and a really great friend. So he said, "I'd love you to be the first." So I was the first composer resident. I think they've had numerous since. But so I said, "I'd love to do it, absolutely." So I don't know how they found the money, but they did. And I flew out. So I went out. I mean, 5, 6 times, I think, for concerts where they performed my stuff. Maybe more than that, I think. And it was over 2 years, I think. And I loved it because so the great thing about being a composer in residence is you get to know everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So the first time I went out, of course, I said to Michael, I don't just want to work with the choir professionally, I want to meet them for dinner and go for walks with people who are up for it and stuff. So that's what we did. So they've almost all of them. It changes over time. The personnel, of course, have become really good friends, and so we keep
Yeah.
in contact. And so I've gone on holidays with people from the choir and stuff. Well, Russ
That's
and Joanne Mann,
yes.
Russ, I've been on holiday with them up to Jasper National Park loads of times.
Yes. I think I
Um,
remember them. I stayed with them in Edmonton one time, and yeah, they're just such lovely hosts. And I think
Fabulous.
everyone wanted to show you the Canadian landscape and the Alberta Rockies, and
Oh,
yeah,
and they did. It
yeah.
was stunning. And well, I said to Russ, I'm getting off the point here, but I'll come back to the. But I said to Russ when we were going out, he said, "What do you want to see?" And I said, "Well, of course, I haven't seen any of this before. I'd love to see whatever. It's all magical,
You
but I
want to see a
really
moose.
want to see. I want to see a moose, and I want to see a bear." And he said, "Look, I
Ah,
can't." He said, "I can't guarantee either of those. That they're quite." He said, "He's been going there for 60 years. You know." He said, "Yeah, he hasn't always seen them."
mm.
We get out the car for our first stop to get a coffee or something. I can't remember. And Russ goes like that, and I turned around, and there was a moose. The first day, and she was just eating grass or whatever they were doing, right by us, you know. So that was just unbelievable. And then the second day, we were driving along, and there's a load of cars pulled up. So obviously something's going on, and there was a bear, black bear. The
Wow.
second day, yeah, unbelievable. Russ couldn't believe it. It's very unusual, I think, to see them on the touristy trails that we were on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
so that was beautiful. All that was wonderful, and of course, that trip with them up to the Jasper inspired my second symphony. So my symphony number
I
two,
didn't
Sacred
know that.
Places. Yeah, it's inspired by that trip because we were up at a mountain. I forget which one it is now, and we were looking over at Edith Cavell. I think
Mm.
that's right, and there was an avalanche.
Oh my
And what
goodness.
struck not on our mountain, it was on the other.
Mm.
But what struck me about it is you don't hear anything. You see it, and then ages after you hear it because of the distance it has to travel. That was a magical experience and amazing. And we were on top of this mountain. There's nobody anywhere,
Mm.
and it just felt to me like a sacred place. So my symphony number two is called Sacred Places. So I was inspired by that. So working with Procol, so I got to go and know them really well. And of course, they sing like a dream. You know,
Mm.
they've got to be one of the best choirs in the world, I think. And they had no problem with singing my stuff. And so the first big thing they did was my Stabat Mater, which is a big piece for choir and orchestra. And they did it in the Winspear Centre on Good
Mm.
Friday. And it was full of people. I don't know, maybe it's 1,000 people. How many people does that
It's a
place
big
hold? I mean, it's
hall. I'm not sure.
enormous.
Yeah, it's
It's
beautiful.
enormous. And so that was the first experience, and they did a wonderful job of that. Then they did my big oratorio, The Farthest Shore, which involves acting and moving, and they did all of that. And that was brilliant. And then they commissioned a number of pieces. They premiered a number of pieces. So they asked me to write a piece for Podium. So Podium was being hosted in Edmonton that year,
Yep.
and I think they were organising it. I think you were at that, weren't you?
Yes, it was.
And so that's right. So Michael said, "Look, I want a piece for this. You know, a big piece, about 15 minutes, and we'll finish the first half with it." So I thought, great, fantastic. So I wrote a piece called "To Seek Where Shadows Are."
Yeah.
And I wanted to write a piece to thank Russ and Joe, to remember a wonderful person called Clarissa Dixon Wright. I don't know if you know, she was a famous chef who's on BBC TV and stuff, and she died that year. And so I wanted to remember her, and I wanted to write something for Michael. So there's three movements dedicated to each of
Mm.
them, and they're settings of Christina Rossetti, because I've fallen in love with Rossetti's poetry and never had an opportunity to set it, because every time somebody asked me to write something, it just didn't fit what the
Mm.
commission was. So I thought, right, there's no text being asked here, so I can pick whatever I want. So I picked these three gorgeous poems by Christina Rossetti, and I decided that the last one would be a setting of In the Bleak Midwinter. You know, her wonderful
Yeah,
poem
of course.
about oh, what a poem. I mean, and loads of composers have set it over the years. I thought, right, I'm going to have a go at that. If I can do Ubi Caritas, I can certainly have a go at this, you know. And so I did, and I think it's one of the best pieces I've ever written. The End of Bleak Midwinter.
Really.
It's one of the pieces that I'm very close to.
Yeah.
It's now one of my most performed works.
Yeah,
That
I've sung
movement.
it. Hmm.
Oh, you have, brilliant. Well,
Yeah,
that movement on its own now is done up just as separately as its own.
yeah.
The whole cycle, the three are pretty tricky.
Mm,
The one movement is very, very hard. So the whole cycle isn't done that often, but that last piece is. And so
hmm.
working with them, of course, I knew their strengths because I'd been working with them for years. So I knew I could push the sopranos this way. I knew I had an ultra low bass section where I could really have
Yeah,
those low chords, which I've become infamous for. And I knew the tenor, I knew the soloists, I knew exactly
yeah,
which soloist I wanted to sing which bit. And so you're writing for them. And that's the great thing about being a composer in residence. And when you've got a top choir like that,
yeah,
they can do anything really. Um,
yeah.
uh,
It's a dream.
so in that piece, I was supposed to be out there this year.
Oh,
Um, Michael had programmed my requiem called "The Souls of the Righteous" for the Canadian premiere. I
mm,
think that's right, along with Eschenwald's piece, big piece, and we were both agreed to come out, the two of us, Eric Eschenwald and myself. But of course, with the outbreak, it's been
yeah.
postponed. So the relationship carries on, even though I'm not composer in residence anymore.
Oh, that's so wonderful, and it really ties you to Canada. We're very glad that
Love it.
Cora brought you to Canada, and that you have now all these, like you say, lasting relationships with
Mm, yeah.
people, and that you said yes to this interview today. So
Uh,
it's here we are.
That's right.
Like
Brilliant.
that. Yeah. So I want to go back. You said that your second symphony was inspired partly by Jasper National Park.
Yep.
Tell us about writing for orchestra. I know your first entry to music was through this exposure to this amazing choir that you heard. How
Yes.
did
Yeah.
you then, and then of course brass instruments was exposed to playing in the orchestra.
Yeah.
How do you approach an orchestral commission differently from a choral commission? What kind of process do you use, and how does that compare between ensembles?
Yeah. It is quite different. The world is different. They don't have as much rehearsal time.
Mm,
So you basically get one or two rehearsals for an orchestral piece. So you have to be aware of that. They're much more. I enjoy both. So I don't prefer one or the other. Maybe my heart's a little bit more in choirs, but I do write a lot of both. Yeah. So tackling the orchestra, you have to know it. You have to know the orchestra because they know. Orchestral players know if you're blagging.
yeah.
If you don't know your stuff.
Did
So
Matthias ingrain you with
yeah,
those
yeah,
techniques, the orchestration, all of the
yeah.
details of how to write for orchestra?
He did. He did. He started off, and then when I studied at university with
Mm,
Nicola Lefanu, the
mm,
great English composer, she also was very important to her that you knew your instruments.
mm.
So I'd be set tasks on writing a solo flute piece or a solo violin piece, and having to use the instrument in different ways so you understood what's possible, what isn't. And then when I left York, where I did my degree, I went to study in Copenhagen, in Denmark, with Per Nørgaard, the great Danish composer who was a pupil of Sibelius. He's 87 or 88 now, I think. And
Wow.
then and Hans Abrahamsen. And now, if you don't know Hans' music, it's most outstanding music, and he's the most gentle, nicest guy in the world. So I actually studied orchestration, not composition, at
Ah,
masters. Yeah, with Hans, who's perhaps one of the best orchestrators I've ever met. And yeah, so that's what we did. It was orchestration, and so by the time I'd finished in Denmark, I kind of really knew the orchestra reasonably well. I still
mm,
made mistakes, everyone does, but pretty much I got it. And so my first symphony took 8 years to write. It's an hour and a half
mm.
for choir and orchestra, soloists, everything. Everything you can think of is in it. So that was premiered in 2015. So I was a bit
Oh,
of a way going to get to number one, and then number two came great
mm,
straight after that. And I've written a third one, which was premiered, symphony number three called Illumination, which was
mm.
commissioned by the BBC National Orchestra of Wales. That was premiered in 2018, and I'm working on a fourth one now as well. Yeah, which is for
Does that have
20.
a premiere date in mind?
It does. We're talking about the dates and stuff at the moment, so I won't,
Mm,
I won't say that. But it's got a subtitle which is called "At the Haunted End of Day,"
mm,
which is a beautiful line from an opera called "Troilus and Cressida" by William Walton. It's from the lyrics. There's a wonderful poem in that opera, which is the haunted end of day. I think itself sounds beautiful, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So
Does
yeah.
that symphony have chorus or soloist as well?
No, just orchestras, that one. And number one is the only one that has the choir. Number two doesn't either, and three doesn't, or four. Three is an unusual, one of the most weirdest pieces I've ever written. They're all on YouTube, so people can look at them and listen to them
Yeah,
for
we'll
free.
definitely post some
Three
as
is the
well.
weirdest one because I create whale sounds in the orchestra, so I get them, doing string harmonics, and
Yeah.
then I put all sorts of weird effects in the. I never normally do this kind of stuff, but it just came to me, and so you hear as the piece halfway through dies down, and suddenly you hear the earth calling through whales and birds, and yeah, it's quite unusual. It really had a massive effect on its premiere with people. They weren't expecting it from me, you see. So
Right.
it's,
Wow, how cool. And now that sort of, I'm sure, translates into writing film music, which is all about the orchestration and the effect. And
yes, yeah.
are you using any of those sort of extended techniques in film scores, or does it have to be? Is it going to be recorded by a live orchestra? Or is somebody going to realize it with MIDI?
It is. I'm not allowed to say who or what, but I can talk around it because they've not announced it. I know it's weird, isn't it? They've not announced it, and I don't want to put my foot in it.
Yep.
But they, yes, it's going to be a live orchestra, which I'll conduct myself.
Oh,
And
cool.
that's the dates of that have been set, so we know I'll be recording next August if we're back to normal. We
Yeah.
hope by then.
Yeah.
I have an assistant as well called Ben McMillan, a great guy. So he's going to help me with all of the other stuff because it's an enormous amount of work. It's 4 hours
Oh,
of music,
copy work
Um,
and parts and all of
yeah,
that kind of
and
stuff.
just making sure I'm all on the right track and stuff,
Yeah.
and also a sounding board. I'm going to play things to him and stuff.
Wow.
We've worked together before, so it's great. And yeah, so the theme, I can tell you, the theme is about water. And I think that's why I was asked because I think they'd heard that
Mm.
symphony, and I think that kind of inspired them. So I can use some of those sounds. That's already been agreed in the piece in the film. Yes, which is brilliant, isn't it? Yeah.
Very cool. Oh, well, I can't wait. When will we know what the film is? And
Pretty soon. Pretty soon.
okay,
Yep. Yep.
I
That'll be
won't
that'll
press
be
you
announced.
anymore. All right. Well, I always love to ask composers about their daily routine. It's always interesting to look back and see how the greats of history
Yeah.
used to structure their days. All kinds of artists and writers, and there's a lot of research that's been done into that. So, do you have a regular pattern for how you go about a creative day?
I do. I mean, I worked for 20 years at the University of Aberdeen, and I've now taken semi-retirement from that, even though I'm only 45, to concentrate almost fully on composition. So I only teach 1.5 days a week, which is great. I cram all my doctoral students. I just teach PhDs now. I cram all that into Thursday afternoon and Fridays.
And you teach
So the rest,
composition?
sorry?
You teach composition?
Yes, I have PhDs in composition is what
Yeah.
I teach now. So I don't do any of the other stuff
Nice.
which I used to enjoy, but takes you away from composing, of course.
Mhm.
So now I have most of the week, almost all the week, to write. And so I've always, even when I was teaching full time, I always had um, a kind of system. And there are two things I always used to think about. William Matthias, who was never stopped working, and he was composing right until the moment he died. And he said that composing is like being an athlete. You have to warm up, and you have to jog, and you have to run every day.
Ah,
He said you have to do it every day, so it becomes that is your routine. And he's absolutely right. And I compose every day. And so the second thing I remember is Roald Dahl, the great children's writer of Charlie and the
yeah.
Chocolate Factory and all these things. He very famously said that when somebody said to him, "Where do you get your inspiration, Mr. Dahl?" And he said, "At the desk." And it took me ages to realize what that meant. And what he means is similar to what William was saying, is that you get your inspiration whilst you're doing it.
Mm.
Sitting down each day at that time and writing, things come to you. They just do. And that's what he was trying to say. Stravinsky said something similar.
Mhm.
So my routine every day, unless I've gone to a party or something, of course, you can't, it's not every day, but most days, or I'm just tired or something, or the
Yeah.
cat needs attention. Sometimes, it's different. I have a wonderful cat, might make an appearance at some point,
Oh.
called Claude, Clawed. And it's strange because he doesn't claw. I mean, he's the most unaggressive cat that there
That's
is.
cute.
He's called Claude de Pussy. So anyway, so I get up. pretty early. I normally like to do a little bit of exercise. So I've got a bike, or I go for a walk or something, just to get me into the mood. And then I work for 4.5 hours every day.
Four and a
And that-
half.
yeah, every 4 hours every day, and I divide that with lunch, so I'll have lunch in the middle. So it's normally 2.5 hours lunch, 2 hours, and then I've got the rest of the day free because I enjoy cooking and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, every day. And of course, the funniest thing is, I don't know about you, but even though I do this, I still find every single thing I can to not start work. So I'll sit down at my desk, I'll sharpen my pencils, I'll
There's
move the
dust
music
on the
around.
mantelpiece. There's
Yeah, any
flowers.
procrastination I can think of. But for me, I've now figured it out, that I think that is a kind of meditative way of getting into the notes, I think. That's how I've told myself anyway. But so every day it's the same, and I know I'm doing it. There must be some counselors out there will have something to say about that.
But it's
So that's
part
what I
of
do.
the routine.
Yeah, and I never compose more than that unless I'm on a tight deadline,
Yeah.
where I have to get something done. Normally, I don't do any more at work, because I think I can only really, when you're in that kind of intense concentration for a third of your day, you come out of it in a really weird state. You come out of it, and you know what it's like. You come out of it, and the tune is going around in your head. The harmony, how can I solve that problem, is going around in your head. So I suppose you never stop.
But that
Right.
time away from the desk, once you've gotten all the work down, or as much as you can do for the day, is so important too. And I think there is research that shows that period where you step away and you let it kind of on the back burner work
Yeah.
things out, and the next time you sit down, there's something new to do, or new to say, or a
It,
problem that's to solve.
It's true, and I can actually I solve some problems when I'm out walking. I love walking. In here in Scotland, it's not as beautiful as the Jasper National Park, but it's still pretty epic and
Pretty
stunning.
beautiful.
And so I've got lovely routes, walks that I go on through the hills and across the rivers and stuff. And an ex-student of mine, a guy called Ed Jones, who did his PhD with me a few years ago, bought me the most amazing little book, with music notation in it, that just fits in the pocket, and a little pencil that goes with it. So I'm now on my third one, but it was him that got me into that idea. So I take it with me on the walks every now and again, not always, but every now and again. Oh, something will come, or that's how I can deal with that.
Yeah.
So you're right. And the funniest thing, and I'm sure you're the same, is each day I spend at least an hour rubbing out what I wrote the day before.
I
My
just
life is,
crashed it. I've got,
or correct you, so my life is basically rubbing out what I've done. It's odd.
but just as important, and it wouldn't be the same if you hadn't written that bit that you throw out. I like to
Yeah.
think that way.
Well, the great American composer Morton Lauridson, who I'm sure you know his work. He's become a really good friend of mine,
Oh,
and a
good.
kind of mentor. Yeah, a really really good friend. We see each other quite a lot. And he said, and I think it's a lovely metaphor, that music is like sculpting. That you write, but then you shave off here, and you kind of rub there, and you change that, and so that's what you're doing. You get the notes and stuff, but then you spend days just refining it. So I think it's a lovely metaphor.
Yeah, beautiful. I just finished Stephen King's sort of semi-autobiographical book called On
Oh,
Writing, and it's fascinating.
wow.
He talks about the same thing, sitting at the desk every day, and his series of drafts. And it's just
Yeah.
like that. It's sort of get it out on the page, and then it's that you have your clay, and then you can
Yeah.
work with it. It's so fascinating.
It is. It's funny because there's a lovely. You can probably see it on YouTube now. C.S. Lewis, the great writer of the Narnia
Yeah.
books, Chronicles of Narnia. There was a young writer, and it was an interview that I saw. Said, I want to be a writer, and he said, "Well, get out the paper and start writing. That's
Yeah.
what a writer is. It's doing it, not talking about it." And I thought he's absolutely right. You've got to get stuck in and write. Yeah. Yeah, so it seems to be a commonplace amongst
Yeah.
writers and artists and composers, that doing it every day, or most days, is important.
Yeah.
I think that's what I've gleaned from various conversations.
Okay, I want to ask you. We're going to have some questions, I hope, from the audience. If you're
Okay.
listening, do feel free to just write a comment, and it will come through our system here, and we'll pose it to Paul. But before we get there, I have two things that I want to ask Paul. And the first one is, do you have any medals like around on your desk that you
I,
always
d-
for
I
fun?
do. I mean, I do. I've got two.
Oh, you're frozen. I hope you get you
We
back.
back?
We're back.
We're back. So I've got this one, which I got from the Queen. That's rather grand.
What is this called?
Kind of. This is the Order of St. John,
Oh my
which
goodness.
is how do I use that? So
So
that's that.
beautiful. So would
And
you
I've
wear that
only
at a formal event? You pin it on your
yeah, I'm desperate to wear it. I've only worn it once, but yeah, you can wear it.
don't wear it
The other one is
grocery
the other
store.
one is a bit more dramatic. It's this one, which
Oh, how
is the
cool.
Order of the Samurai, which
Wow.
given to me by the ambassador, Japanese ambassador. I don't know what that says. I should read it really, should I? But so I'm a samurai, honorary one.
How very
So
cool.
I'll show you.
Wow.
I've never worn that one. But they're quite good thing to bring out at parties.
Oh, it's too fun. It's very, very cool. Well, you've had such wonderful successes and so
Oh,
well deserved.
oh, it
So, do
is.
you have any advice for, as you mentioned, you like mentoring younger composers and even conductors or other choral musicians that might be watching today? Any advice for how to proceed from that period of studenthood to into the professional world in this day and age?
Yeah, yeah, I do. There are 3 points, I think, and there are two issues. I think the first one is the first one that people often talk about. Is they don't know where they're at. So they've studied, they know how to write music, and of course they've got lots of ideas, but they don't know what their voice is. That's the first thing people ask me as a young composer. But yeah, no one does. I mean, that's
Mm,
absolutely true of everybody. No one. Well, the first thing I say to them is not to worry about that, because the voice comes because you. There's pros and cons to having a voice. It's lovely on one level when people say, "Oh, I heard the first bar, I knew it was by you." I mean, that's lovely. But also the converse to that is someone saying, "Well, he's just doing the same thing over and over again." So I mean, that's the problem you have if you have a voice, is people think
mm,
both of those or either. So I say to them, don't worry about that. The kind of music that you love and feel, you'll be drawn to, and to try and find your way through that is the most important thing. So all of the influences that you've had on your life from teachers, but also from the music that you listen to, you'll know where your heart is at, and just to listen to your heart on that. That's the first point. So to write the music that you want to write is the first thing, and that's a hard thing. The hardest thing of all is that.
mm,
But once you get to that, then worry about other people hearing it. I
right.
think most people, when they say to me, "How do I get my music out there?" I said, "Well, you've only written one piece, so you need to try a few things out." So people are desperate to get it out, and I understand that. I was the same. But it's I think the first thing is, once you have the let's talk in business speak, which I
Mm,
hate, but it's
it's
clear for people to
important.
listen.
Yeah.
Once you have the product that you're happy with, the piece, that the style that you think represents what you want to say, um, then people will listen to it. And the way that you do that, I think, is make yourself visible on social media.
Mm,
So Twitter, certainly a certain president seems to enjoy that. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all of the, there's loads of them, isn't there?
mm,
So all of those things, get your stuff out there. Get choirs to have a go at it for you. And choirs love doing new stuff, especially if you're in the choir. They always help a mate
mm.
out, and we'll have to sing of that, of course. Record it if they're happy. Make sure you have permissions and stuff, of course. Get stuff up on YouTube. I'm amazed at the amount of people that contact me because of YouTube. They've heard something on
Wow.
YouTube, and they, "Oh, I really like that," and then they contact me or something. Yeah, I really am amazed by YouTube, because the whole world looks at it. So get your stuff out there. If you can't get a choir together to record your stuff, there are people that do these multi-layer track things. There's a guy that has done a few pieces of mine. He does all the parts, and he charges a very minimal fee, so you can get your music out. One of the things that people often do is they send around PDFs of the score, and so often people have so many of these sent to them that they can't do it justice. Sarah MacDonald, who's the director of music at Selwyn College, Cambridge. I don't know if you
Yeah.
know Sarah. She's
Yeah.
Canadian.
Just putting a piece of mine into print. Yeah, she just
Brilliant.
did a UK premiere of one of my pieces with
Well,
the
she's
song.
fabulous. She's
Yeah,
absolutely fine. She is Canadian. I don't know which part of Canada she's from, but
she's an East Coaster.
is she?
Must be an East Coaster.
Well, she she gets hundreds of, well, she also runs this publishing thing now as well, but she gets hundreds of composers writing to her. And so she sets aside, I was talking to her the other day actually, she sets aside a week, I think, where she just goes through as many as she can.
Yeah.
But of course, she still can't get through everything. And she can't get through them in the normal day because she's got a job and life and stuff. So but people don't. She's very good at doing that, at looking through scores that are sent to her, and then programming them if she likes them. I mean, she's brilliant at that. And I think in almost every service that she does, there's something new or pretty much contemporary, and she's very good at that.
Yeah.
But most people don't have the time to do that, or some of them don't have the inclination to do it. So one thing that I found, and also some people can't really read a score. I know lots of amazing conductors that can't, they have to sit at the piano and play it, they can't get it straight off. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's just a skill you either have or you don't. I know one really famous conductor, who I won't say what it is, that can't read a score, has to get at the piano and play things and see through it. So for him, if you send a YouTube clip, well, he can listen to the YouTube clip whilst he's washing up, or making the dinner or something or whatever, and have a listen to it. And it seems to be easier to send down. And now what people do now on YouTube is you can actually have the score go across as the music goes. That is ideal, because if they listen to something whilst they're doing something else, oh, I like that, and then go to it and there's the score.
Yeah, you can do that. You can export from Sibelius even.
You can.
One of those
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's right, and I would advise everybody to do that, because that's what gets out there. And also, people are happy to share things. So if you forward to someone, what do you think about this? People often then share, let's have a listen to this. And it's really interesting, because the choral world, I don't know what it's like for you guys, but here it's not competitive. I never feel. It was really funny that yesterday on Twitter, a group who was performing pieces of mine, and the composer Will Todd. I don't know if you know Will Todd. He's a wonderful composer. He's written lots of stuff. We're friends. So somebody put, we're enjoying our recording of this piece by Paul Mealor. They tweeted, and of course the piece is by Will Todd. It's not by me.
Oh no!
So I don't. Our styles are completely different. So I don't know why they thought. So I just wrote back saying this isn't by me, but it's by the wonderful Will Todd, and copied him into the tweet. And of course he said thumbs up and stuff. So I've never felt that there's competitive. I always felt that we're all on the same side.
Yeah, it really is a community over here as well. I'm glad to hear that it's like that in the UK.
It is. Well, of course, there are some people that don't think that, and well, fair enough. They can carry on doing what they do. But most people seem to be very happy to share things. So if people tweet things, people are very happy to share them. I certainly do.
I think especially since this pandemic, actually, people have been more connected because, everybody's online anyway. So we've been having nationwide meetings of conductors and composers and roundtables and discussions and things like this that might not have started if it weren't for this, quarantine effect where we're all seeking connection. And people are thinking really creatively and sharing ideas quite openly for how we're going to get out of this and make it in the meantime. So, it's wonderful in a lot of ways.
It is. It is. I've noticed it's brought out a bad side in some people, but it's brought out a wonderful side in most people. So as a person, I mean, people are often amazed when I say this, because I'm quite social when I'm out and about, as you know, and I like chatting to people and stuff. But I actually prefer most of the time on my own. I'm quite a solitary person that people never believe. And so it's nice. The one thing that the occasions that I do normally meet up with chums and stuff is at the weekends. And I have missed that, because you don't realize how much you do miss the company of others. And of course the choirs. I have two choirs that I work with here regularly. One is a small chorus, and one is a big community chorus. And I've really missed that.
Yeah, well, I sincerely hope we can sing together again very, very soon, and travel across oceans in airplanes and all of that, so that we can get you back in Canada and we can all
I want that. Well, I was supposed to go to all sorts of places. I had an epic trip was planned. So I was starting off in Canada. I was doing a week in Canada, finishing off with a trip up to Jasper with Russ and Joe. And then I was heading down to Hartford, Connecticut, there's a brilliant choir there called Voce. I don't know if you've heard of them.
Yeah, I do know
Yeah,
them.
do you know Voce? And Mark Singleton
Yeah,
as their conductor, and I've got a
yeah.
good relationship with them. They just recorded a CD of my stuff called
Oh,
Blessing, which is
cool.
beautiful, beautiful CD. So then I was going over. Then they were doing my requiem there, and then I was going over to Minneapolis, where the choir there called Exultate. I don't know if you know them, and they were doing my Crucifixus there. So I had three. I had an epic 3 week
North
tour,
American tour.
which was really annoying.
Yeah.
So there you
Is
go.
it do you think it'll happen just down the road, next year or the year after, will you'll have them rescheduled,
I think
hopefully?
so. They certainly, yes, I think so. I think the plan is for all three groups, if I remember, if I got that right, was to just do this year, next year, if you
Yeah,
kind of miss a year, kind of thing.
yeah.
And also, this year was it was a sad because uh, two very special things. One is I'd just been made president of the Jam on the Marsh Festival in Kent,
Yes.
and it was their 20th birthday this summer, and of course that's not happening. So they'll be 20 when they're 21. They're doing a virtual thing, which is lovely. So I am going to be part of it. And
Yeah.
then it was the 100th anniversary of the Church in Wales Foundation, and I've been commissioned to write the anthem for that service. And of course, that's not happening as well. So it's like, so it'll be 101 when it celebrates its 100th. So there you go.
Oh,
So yeah, but
it's hard. Oh,
well, the lucky thing for me is that as a composer, the work has carried on. I know so many of my really good friends who are freelance, who conductors or singers or piano teachers or whatever, who they were in real problems when it started and had to find solutions, around it,
yeah.
which they have. But I was lucky I wasn't in that position.
Yeah, yeah, I know some are more affected than others. I was talking with a
Yeah,
group of composer friends a few weeks ago, and there was some concern that it'll be a little bit of a lag effect. If choirs don't come back right away into live performance and having funding and ticket revenue and all of that stuff, then like right now they're following through on commissions, but
yes.
we hope that in a year it's back to normal, so there's no gap in that work.
Yeah,
That it
because
is
you're right.
really
It could be knocked. So next year we
mm,
have a problem. Yeah,
mm,
you're absolutely right. Absolutely right.
fingers
Fingers
crossed.
crossed. Things are starting to happen here in the UK. Lockdown is easing. We're in phase 3 of 4 phases. So we can now travel around, and when I was out today, there was a lot more people out and about than there has been.
Yeah.
So I think
And no
as long as
pizzas in Scotland, right? You said?
yeah,
No pizza.
it's not been officially announced yet, but it's looking like we'll be COVID-19 free by Monday. The announcement hopefully is looking that's going to be made. But the one big worry that the First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has is that people then suddenly relax
Yeah,
and ignore everything, and it just comes back. So she's been very cautious about the final phase, which she's absolutely right to be.
of
Um,
course.
she's a
Yeah.
very good First Minister. I mean, absolutely fantastic First Minister. She's done
She's
everything
very
right.
famous. It's great to
She,
watch on
well, I
YouTube.
wouldn't like to take her on in an argument. She's fantastic
Yeah.
in question time and stuff.
Yeah.
So we've been blessed in Scotland. It's not been the case in England. But in Scotland, we've been blessed. I'm not going to
We
say any
won't
more
go
now. No,
there.
but Scotland has been very no mixed messages. You know exactly where you are at each phase, which is useful.
Well, let's hope that it stays that way and that things can continue to open up and you stay safe.
Yeah,
It was just fantastic to chat with you today, Paul. So much fun.
really fun. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm really glad to hear you're doing well. We have just a couple of comments that say Jane is a member of the Amadeus Choir, says
Oh,
thank
wonderful.
you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So thank you everybody for watching. Thank you, Paul. Take
My
care.
pleasure.
Continue to enjoy the Scottish nature and beauty over there, fresh air,
Thank-
and stay
It's good for
safe.
you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Been a
All
pleasure.
right. Take care.